Hey friends, it's Laurie. Today I'm sharing some spring and Easter DIYs. I used mostly Dollar Tree supplies, and I really hope you enjoy making them with me, so let's get busy. Getting started, I'm using one of the wooden carrot cutouts from the Dollar Tree. I removed the hanger because I'll be adding on my own. I'm using my orange acrylic paint and giving the lower part of the carrot a coat. With that complete, I'm now giving the top of my carrot a coat of green acrylic paint. Now that it's dry, I'm going to be wrapping it, and I'm using some of this natural polished hemp. I picked mine up at Home Depot, but you can find it at Michael's and Walmart, and it has just a nice finished edge, and it's a bit thicker than regular jute. I cut about a 2-foot length, and on the bottom back of the carrot I added a dot of hot glue and placed down the end. I waited a couple of seconds for it to set up, and now I'm starting to wrap my carrot. I made sure that the bottom was covered, and then I started to wrap it around. I'm trying to keep the hemp as tight as possible as I'm wrapping it around, and then just adding a dot of hot glue in the back to hold it in place. As I'm wrapping it around the front, I'm doing my best to keep it straight, and then I'm adding a dot of hot glue here and there to help hold the hemp in place. I cut about a 2-foot length of hemp, give or take, and I found that it was easier to work with shorter pieces than directly off the roll. For this project, I decided to wrap my carrot, but this step is completely optional, and I think it would look just as cute freshly painted. Now that I've made it to the top, my carrot is finally complete. I'm using a foam brush along with the same orange paint that I used to paint the carrot, and I'm giving the front and the sides a quick coat, not perfect, just kind of enough to cover it. As the topper on my carrot, I'm using some of this greenery from the Dollar Tree, along with some of the ferns from the Dollar Tree foxtail. I cut away the branches from the main stem, then slid the shorter pieces off from each. I also cut off about a dozen of the foxtail ferns. I added some hot glue to the top of the carrot just above the hemp, and added on some of the fern, and then added on some of the greenery. After I had my first layer of greenery attached, I continued adding on the hot glue and placing the random pieces of greenery on the carrot. As I was adding it, I did my best to keep the greenery evenly spaced along the top. With that complete, I'm going to make a messy bow for my carrot. I'm using some of this pretty 2.5-inch wired light blue ribbon, some 1.5-inch wired blue and white polka dot ribbon, along with some 1.5-inch burlap ribbon. These all came from the Dollar Tree, along with some 5/8-inch carrot ribbon and green and white gingham ribbon. I'm also adding in some of these 1.5-inch ribbons that I had on hand. I'm cutting all my ribbons at 12 inches and then I'm dovetailing the ends, which is super easy. I just fold the ribbon in half and cut away the end at an angle. I'm cutting two 12-inch ribbons from each roll and dovetailing all of their ends. I'm also adding in some random ribbons with different sizes from other projects that I had cut and I didn't end up using. With all my ribbons cut and dovetailed, I'm pulling out the shorter ones because I'll be adding those onto the top. To make my messy bow, I'm placing down my ribbons in random order and I'm kind of flaring them out on each side. After all my 12-inch ribbons were in place, I then added in the shorter ones that I had cut for other projects. I'm using a 12-inch piece of floral wire to attach my bow together. I'm gathering the ribbons in the center, placing the floral wire around them, pulling them together tightly, and twisting the wire in the back. I fluffed my bow out, and then using my clippers, I removed the extra wire on the back. With my bow complete, I attached it to the carrot with some hot glue. Now that I have it in place, I'm just kind of fluffing the edges up just a bit. As the bunny accent on my carrot, I'm using one of these little plush bunny butts from the Dollar Tree. They come in blue and pink, and because I added blue ribbons to my project, I'm going to be using the blue one. I removed the stick from the bottom and it does leave a little hole, so I just placed in some hot glue and pressed it together. I then added some hot glue to the center of my bow and attached the bunny. For the ears, I'm using a leftover Dollar Tree bunny headband, and I had used the ears in a past project. They make the perfect size and there's plastic inside, so I snapped the ear where I wanted to cut it. To add the ears, I placed them in front of the bunny and tucked them in between the greenery. Then to attach them, I just used my hot glue gun. To make a hanger for my carrot, I cut about 18 inches of the hemp. I fed it through the original hanger holes and made a couple of knots. And with that, my bunny in a carrot patch is complete. If you're new to my channel, please consider clicking on that little red subscribe button below, leaving me a thumbs up, and to all my returning friends, you know how special you are to me, and I love reading your comments below. To make my springtime gnome, I'm using one of these wooden gnome cutouts from the Dollar Tree. I'm adding on a beard, so I just slid my butter knife under the hands and the butterfly to remove them. I'm now removing the little piece of burlap, and the gnome's nose is attached to it, so that's coming off too. I removed the hanger and I'm giving the front a coat of white acrylic paint. I'm painting the gnome's shoes a different color, so I'm leaving those blank. Using the same white acrylic paint, I painted the butterfly in the center of the hands. For the gnome's hands and boots, I'm using some of my gray acrylic paint. And once again, I'm giving each a coat. For the butterfly in the center of the hands, I'm using this large pink one, and I picked this package up at Michael's. I actually got it on clearance for 90 cents at the end of the season, and sometimes you can find them at the Dollar Tree. To attach it, I placed some hot glue on the back of the body and centered it between the hands. I then added some hot glue to the top of each of the wings to help hold them in place. For my gnome's beard, I'm using one of these hanging gnomes from the Dollar Tree, and the beard is glued on, so I just kind of pulled at it and it came off pretty easily. I cut away the pink pom-pom nose, and I'll save that for a project in the future. The end of the beard is kind of scraggly, so I used my scissors to clean it up. To attach the beard, I'm first placing down some hot glue on the body and then attaching it so that the boots will show on the bottom. I want to fluff the gnome's hat out just a bit, so I'm using a handful of polyfill. I added some hot glue to the top of the gnome's head and then placed down the polyfill. To add on my gnome's hat, I'm using one of these pink knit caps that I found at the Dollar Tree. I folded down the side with the embroidery, turned it around, and I'm going to be working on the back. To add it onto my gnome, I simply slid it over its head. For my gnome's nose, I'm using a 1.5-inch wooden bead, but you can always use one of the table tennis balls from the Dollar Tree. I'm giving my gnome's nose a coat of coral acrylic paint. Now that it's dry, I'm adding some hot glue to the center of the beard, just under the edge of the hat. I added a line of hot glue across the nose and placed down the edge. With that in place, I'm now turning the gnome over and attaching the back of the hat. I need to tighten the hat up just a bit, so I'm adding a little bit of hot glue to one side and folding the fabric over. I'm then following the same instructions for the other side. I'm continuing to work my way up both sides of the hat by adding on some hot glue and folding the fabric over. By the time I make it to the top, I've folded both of the sides into a point. Before I attach the hands to the gnome, I'm going to add on a little accent with my colored yellow pencil. I'm outlining both of the gnome's boots with my pencil and then rubbing it in with my fingers. With those complete, I'm moving on and following the same instructions for the hands. The reason I'm using a yellow pencil is because I'm adding on 2 daisy accents, and the center of those are yellow, so this kind of pulls it all together. I'm now placing these to the side, and I'm going to add an accent onto my gnome's hat. I'm using some of this crochet thread that I had on hand. It's a little bit thinner than yarn, but you can use yarn, ribbon, jute, anything you'd like. I made sure to cut a piece long enough to wrap around my hat. I attached the end of the thread onto the back top point of the hat using my glue gun. I then started wrapping it around at a slight angle, making sure to keep the same spacing between each section. When I came to the end, I turned it over, snipped off the excess string, and then hot glued the end in place. I also added some hot glue onto each string in the back just to help hold them in place. I added on some hot glue, attaching the hands and making sure that I centered the butterfly under the gnome's nose. I'm adding on 2 daisy accents, and these came from the Dollar Tree. I added some hot glue to the back of each, attached one near the gnome's nose and the other at the top of the hat. I'm going to make a stand for my gnome, and I'm using 12 of the tumbling tower blocks. If you'd prefer yours to hang, just add a piece of jute or ribbon onto the back. I'm using my glue gun and I'm attaching together 2 stacks of 6. And because these don't have to be perfect, because they're going to be on the back, I'm using my glue gun instead of my Starbond thick glue. I'm giving both sets of blocks a coat of white acrylic paint. Now that they're dry, I'm adding some hot glue to the back of each boot and pressing on the stands. Now that I'm done, this cute little gnome is ready for spring. I'm starting my rustic bunny trail sign by using one of the wooden arrows from the Dollar Tree. I removed the jute hanger and I'm giving it a coat of white acrylic paint. With the paint dry and to give it a rustic vibe, I'm just using an ordinary pencil. I'm rubbing the edge of the pencil along the outside edges of the arrow and then just rubbing them in with my fingers. This accent is completely optional, and if you'd prefer a clean white sign, just skip this step. I'm going to be adding on a small rustic arrow, and I'm using one of the wooden skewers from the Dollar Tree. I measured it against the arrow and I cut mine at about 4 inches. I then cut 2 short pieces to use as the points. I'm painting mine with some gray acrylic paint and setting them aside to dry. As one of the accents on my sign, I'm using this pink bunny from this Dollar Tree garland, and all I did was remove it from the jute hanger. I'm adding 2 words onto my sign, so I'm first marking where I'm going to place the bunny. I printed out the word bunny trail on my Cricut in a condensed face and their 1-inch letters. Now that I know my spacing, I'm attaching them onto the sign. If you don't have a Cricut, you can always find some really nice letter stickers at Michael's. I'm creating a base for my sign and I'm using 9 of the tumbling tower blocks from the Dollar Tree. I'm attaching 6 together with my Starbond thick glue, and I have the company linked below in my description in case you'd like to check it out. You can also use a regular glue or your glue gun. For me, the Starbond glue, it just lets me attach them tighter together. They set up super quick in about a minute or 2, and now I'm going to give all my pieces a coat of white acrylic paint. Now that they're dry, I'm adding a line of hot glue in the center of the blocks and attaching down the sign. I'm now turning the sign around and hot gluing my last 3 blocks against it to support the back. With my words bunny trail in place, I'm now attaching my gray arrow. Because they're such thin pieces of wood, I'm attaching them with my Aleene's tacky glue. You can also use Elmer's glue or any type of glue that will hide behind the wood. Before I add on my bunny, I'm once again using my pencil and accenting the front of the base. I'm making a simple bow for the bunny, and I'm using some of the black and white farmhouse ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I then added it to the bunny's neck with my glue gun. And once again, I used some hot glue and attached it to my sign. To finish up, I'm using one of the Dollar Tree carrots along with their green and white gingham ribbon, and once again I'm making a simple bow. Now that I'm done, I'm using my glue gun and attaching it to the top of the carrot. To finish up my Easter bunny trail sign, I'm attaching it to the side of the arrow. And with that, this project is complete. Here we are at the end of the video, and I really hope you enjoyed making these spring and Easter DIYs with me. If you're new to my channel and you're thinking, hey, I'd like to come back and hang out with her again, don't forget to click that little red subscribe button below. If you're looking for more spring and Easter home decor inspiration, I'll leave some of my playlist for you at the end of this video. I hope you all have a safe and amazing day, and I will see you soon. Bye, everybody!